Hello everybody, Wild Bill for America here. Danny wrote me a note saying, religion is a substitute for a real understanding of the universe. It's designed to console those who want a comforting celestial father who will keep them alive after they die. I accept evidence and don't have enough faith to believe in fairy tales such as God. Well, Danny's YouTube picture is a Star Trek badge, so I have a pretty good idea where Danny gets his real understanding of the universe.
Is anybody else really disinclined to say live long and prosper to this guy? Let's do this. Greetings, fellow space travelers. BionicDance here. Meet Wild Bill for America. Now, when I first saw this video, I looked all over the internet because I was convinced that it was satire or parody. Turns out Wild Bill is the real deal. Scary, innit? Now, as most of you know, I'm rather more of a warzy than a Trekkie. Some people take that to mean that I hate Star Trek. But if that's true, then what in hell am I doing with these? So while I'm not as rabid about this one as I could be, as a sci-fi nerd with the tattoos to prove it, I feel the need to defend even Trek. So let's see what Wild Willie here has to say.
Danny's note was one of the few that had no spelling or punctuation errors. It's sad that those are so rare that they stand out.
Gotta admit, I was surprised to find a place where he and I would agree. Moving on.
Anyway, Danny, you don't believe in God, so let me ask you this. Where exactly have you looked? Did you look as far as Montana? I doubt it.
Are you saying that God is in Montana? That if we went there, we'd find him? Are you saying that everyone who found God in Montana was all hush-hush about it? That orbital satellites weren't able to detect his presence? Why don't we see God in Google Street View? You'd think if God was found in Montana, there'd be some pretty big headlines about it. I'm just saying.
And I'm quite certain that you've never looked behind Venus or Jupiter. Is it possible that in the vast expanse of the universe that an all-powerful being could exist that cannot be detected even with warp drive and sensors?
Is it possible? I suppose. Is it likely? Not really.
Inconceivable.
And let's suppose that is the case, and God is hiding out in space, undetectable. Then how did humans ever hear of him? You can't have it both ways. Either God doesn't exist and that's why we have no evidence of him, or God does exist and is staying hidden so we have no reason to suspect that he exists. And isn't it convenient that round about the same time that humanity started developing some pretty badass science skills, suddenly encounters with the divine start dwindling dramatically? None are captured on camera, and most of the stories we're told sound not too terribly different from your average fairy tale. Interesting that.
You say that you accept evidence? Really? I find that hard to believe. We have eyewitness accounts of the life of Jesus Christ that would stand up in any court of law.
And yet, when DNA evidence started exonerating prisoners who'd been wrongfully convicted on the basis of eyewitness testimony, the U.S. court system began revising how eyewitness accounts could be used in a court of law. In 2011, the New Jersey Supreme Court created new rules for the admissibility of such evidence. Forensic psychologists have expounded upon the reasons why it's not the best idea to rely on eyewitness testimony. And now you want us to believe accounts which are literally millennia old, when people still believed the world was flat and the sun went around it, when human understanding of the universe was not merely limited but often dead wrong, and when those accounts are about some pretty incredible and unprecedented things like virgin births and walking on water. If the Roswell UFO crash of 1947 is still under dispute despite eyewitnesses, I'm gonna say that the Jesus myth in 0 AD is a hell of a lot less reliable. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that you have no idea what you're talking about.
Only a numbskull thinks he knows things about things he knows nothing about.
We have archaeological evidence supporting just about everything in the Bible.
Except, you know, that whole Jews in Egypt thing, and Noah's flood, or Genesis claiming that all animals were herbivores.
That's what turns me on about you. Your attention to detail.
Do I really need to go on?
And we have historical evidence that Jesus Christ impacted the world more powerfully than any other man, ever. He actually split history. Even those who don't believe in him sign their years as either BC or AD.
Except, you know, those people who started using CE and BCE. For those of you who don't know, those are Common Era and before Common Era. And you notice how in Star Trek, it's always Stardate 867530.9 or whatever. You know, the US still uses inches and feet instead of the metric system. Doesn't mean we're right to do it. Staying old-fashioned just because somebody went all fanboy on an old myth doesn't exactly sound like a good idea.
The resurrection of Jesus Christ was documented by both Jewish and Roman writers. So, what evidence are you waiting for?
Gee, I don't know. How about something that'll hold up in a science lab and isn't easily mistaken for a fairy tale?
I suspect that you're in the same boat as millions of other people. You don't believe because you don't want to believe.
Telling me what I believe and why?
To peddling.
But as long as we're slinging the mud here, let me take my own turn. I think you believe because you want to believe. See? It goes both ways. Now where does that leave us?
The existence of God interferes with their pursuits of illicit pleasures. Many who hold those kinds of belief tend to worship at the altar of orgasms. The pursuit of pleasure is their reason to live, and damn anything that gets in the way of orgasms, anytime, anywhere, and with anybody.
Thank you, sir. May I have another? Thank you, sir. May I have another?
I don't know about you, but I think it's sad that his fantasies about my life are so much better than my own.
The existence of God would mean accountability to him, so many simply shove that possibility aside and try to convince themselves that they are too intelligent to believe such things.
And the idea that we might actually have legitimate reasons, such as lack of evidence, for not believing in your God is not a possibility you're willing to consider. Newsflash, William, I don't believe in a deistic, doesn't interfere in any way at all God either, and for the same reasons.
And that is absolutely impossible for a God to exist in the universe without them knowing about him.
Oh, it's not impossible for a God to exist without me knowing about it. It's just impossible for me to believe that a God exists with insufficient data. Not what I meant.
And these are the people who love to say that Christians are deluded.
Have you the brainworms?
But Danny is right pretty much about one thing. Most religion is a substitute. Man-made religion tends to be made up to fill a void in the hearts of men and really has no more factual basis than Star Trek.
Oh, really? Because I can name a few things that Star Trek and the real world have in common. Like spaceships, communicators, handheld computers. Now how about you show me some resurrections, virgin births, and some old dude in a robe using the Force to make the sea split in half?
I hate to be the one to break it to you, but Star Trek is a substitute for real understanding of the universe.
Name for me one person, with the possible exception of Sheldon Cooper, who does not realize that Star Trek is fiction. Nobody is looking at their Star Trek DVD and going, well, hey, a science manual.
There's only one religion that is not man-made. There's only one God and only one way to know him, to understand the universe, and that is through Jesus Christ.
Says you.
So, Danny, if you want real understanding, toss that Star Trek costume and pick up a Bible.
You know, I'm looking through the index. Where in this book is the section on nebulae, black holes, and time dilation? Anyway, I'm done with this petach. Until next time, fellow space travelers, this is BionicDance saying don't run on automatic. Instead, please live long and prosper. Not rating and subscribing has been found to cause obesity, acne, and male pattern baldness in laboratory rats.